Okay, so it's time to introduce the next layer of complexity. And if you're in one of my classes, there is a place to take a screenshot of what you produce. At the moment, we've got one part in our image in our part studio. Now, what I haven't shown you yet is that you can make other part studios inside this same document. So using the plus sign down at the bottom, I click on that and I can create a new part studio. So one of the options I've got is I can create a part studio and I can remodel a different image on entirely different part studio. And that's what we're going to do. But I can make more than one part in the original. So I'm going to click back on my part studio one. We're going to do it here in a second, but I'm going to click back on here. So what I could do, I'm not going to, what I could do is draw a new sketch on here, create an object, turn it into 3D. I can make sure this says it's a new part. Okay, a new part. So I could make a new part. You can see I've got two parts down here. Now, if sometimes that's useful. So you can make new parts. So if I was doing a nut and bolt, it would be useful to do them both in the same drawing. Okay, but in this case, I want two totally different things, and I don't want to get confused with where my dice is and accidentally selecting the faces of the dice and things like that along the way. So I'm just going to get rid of Sketch 8 by pressing delete. Okay. I can go to Part Studio 2 and I can start a brand new drawing. So let's click on this and have a little zoom in. Now, I'm going to teach you to use this lovely loft tool, which enables us to draw lines on multiple planes and then to be able to drag a surface up them, okay, or over them. It would be good to see my object in this. Okay, so we're going to start making a shaker to put our dice in. So we've got a nice finished dice and we want to make another object, so another part. Now I could do that inside this part studio, but if I do that, when I'm trying to manipulate and add extra drawings and do things like that, all these selections might get in the way. Now it is possible to isolate this so that it doesn't do that, but even then I've got all of these things in my sketch which are just going to get in the way, okay, and make it a little bit difficult and awkward to find the bits that I'm currently working on. So instead of doing that, I'm going to make a new part assembly and I'm going to add this to it so that I can see how big it is and where it is in relationship to the object I'm going to make. So in essence, we're going to block this as a model that can't be interacted with into a new part studio. So to do that, I'll come down to the plus sign and I'm going to stop in a second and let you get yourself ready to do this new object. Okay, so I'm going to go down to the plus sign. I'm going to create a new part studio. Once I've created the new part studio, that will open up. Okay, I've got a couple more steps. Now, finding this next one is a little bit tricky, or it can be a little bit tricky. It's underneath what looks like this to you at the moment. So I think it's that one. So it looks like this. Okay, so it's underneath plane. There's an arrow next to it. You need to scroll right the way to the bottom and where it says derived. This is a new feature that they've inserted into the program and it's really super helpful. So I can add a derived part. If I select the red part here, I can then select the part from my part studio that I want to include. You can see I can add all sorts of derived parts, but this is the one I want, the whole part. Okay. Once I'm happy with the part I've selected, I click tick and then it comes in and you can see now the whole cube, all the structure, everything is in this image. So it's in Part Studio 2, but it's in there as derived 1. My last step to try and make it obvious that this is not an active part in this model is I'm going to right click on here and I'm going to make transparent. And that just means I can see where it is and roughly how big it is. But you can see now I can't accidentally select any of those parts or sides that I don't want. So it gives me a really good guideline as to how big I'm doing things. At the end, I can always delete this part out of here if I don't want it in here. So I can just remove it at any point I need to, or I can delete the derived. Okay? So before I go any further, get yourself into this position where you've got a part Studio 2 and a new part, which is the old dice. Now, I appreciate that last bit was a little bit complex. If it didn't work and you've had trouble with it for whatever reason, then, oh, it's, let me just do that, make transparent again. If it didn't work for whatever reason, then you can just start again from nothing. Okay, so far we've made ourselves a dice and we're ready to start moving a little bit further forward with this. So we're going to make a shaker, so like a tub to put the dice in, so as if you're going to shake it up before you roll it in a little tub. So we're going to make that tub, but I'm not going to make it in the same scene. I could do, that would be absolutely fine. We could make a new part. If you remember, if I draw a sketch and I make an object, if it's not connected to that, or even if it is connected to that, let's just do the extrude. Okay, I can make that a new part. Okay, so I can have multiple parts in one design. We're not going to do that. So I'm just going to get rid of that sketch, delete it out. Instead, we're going to move over to a new part studio because it's a little bit easier to control, and it means that our list of items doesn't get too complex down the side here. So we're going to step it up a little bit now. So down here, I'm going to go insert new. So I've got a plus sign, and we're going to create a part studio. So we're going to create one. I'm going to give you a second to do this in a minute to get yourself set up. Now that I've done that, I need to find a way of getting my dice across into here in a way that I can't edit it or select it. So if I go to Part Studio 1, I accidentally could click this surface or this surface whilst I'm trying to make the thing that I'm going to put around it. So to make sure that doesn't happen, I'm going to add it as a derived part. Now, this is a new tool that's been imported into Onshape recently. So it's underneath this plane icon on the arrow, and you have to drop and go right the way to the bottom and you'll find derived. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to go and select on this red part here. I click on that and it will find the other part studios that are open. It will say, what part do I want to do? So I can say, I want that part to come in, or I want that part to come in. And then I go back. Oh, sorry, let's go click there. And I click the cross and then I click the tick. And it's inserted it into Part Studio 2. So it wasn't there and now it is. And it's here, inside here. Okay, and hello, welcome back. So we're going to have a go at making a shaker to go around our dice, like a tub for it to go into, all right? But this is our introduction to making multiple parts. Now, if you remember back in the session, I did say that we could make more than one part simply by making a new sketch and drawing something. And then when we go to extrude, we have the option of making a new part or adding it to something that's already connected. So here, if I made a new part, if I click here, it's going to make a new part down here. Okay, if I tell it what it is. So there you go, it's saying new part, and I've suddenly got part 2 has arrived. All right, now that's really useful. I can make more parts inside this object. But actually, what I want to do is I want to move it over to a different part studio. Okay, so that I've got it separate. Maybe I could use it in another project at another time. So I'm going to learn how to put this object into a different part studio. It's a skill we're going to reuse at another time. Just undoing all of the work that I just did. Okay, so to make a new part studio, we've got options at the bottom here. We've got part studios and assemblies. Okay, we can click on the plus sign and we can make a brand new part studio. Now, sometimes we might want to use one of our parts from here inside or attached to another part that's been drawn in a different part studio. Okay, so this is a simple introduction to that. So at the moment I've got no parts and I want to import my dice so that I can see it. To do that, I'm going to use a tool that's new into Onshape. It's up here and it's underneath this plane icon. If you click on the arrow, you're going to go right to the bottom and go to derived. Now you'll have to rewind the video if you forget where this is in a minute, but just stick with me for a second. I'll show you how to do it and then I'll give you time to go and have a go. So I go to derived and then where it says select part studio, I'm going to go and find part 1, okay, which is in the other part studio and it's moving across into this one. When I'm happy I've got the right piece, I click tick and it's now in as derived. Now there's one real advantage to this. Instead of having a list of loads of different parts that I have in Part Studio 1, all these different actions that I took, they're now buried and hidden and I've got just derived 1 written here. Okay, so I can't accidentally do edits on things that I'm getting mistaken. Now you can rename parts, remember. So if I wanted to, I could double click this. I should be able to click this. Let's just do that again. Rename, it's right click, rename, and I could call this dice 1. Okay, so that I know what it is. All right, so I know that derived part is dice 1. It's my dice here. Now, to make it easier and to stop myself selecting things accidentally whilst I make this new model, I'm going to go to part 1 and I'm going to right click and I'm going to make transparent. Now, when I make it transparent, it actually stops me from being able to select it. Okay, so it knows it's not something I want to interact with. Now, this make transparent will have popped open here. You just want to drag that down so it's sat next to the part out of the way. If you close it, it will go back to looking solid again. I'm going to stop there for a second and let you get yourself set up and ready to make your shaker. Okay, so we're ready to start our shaker. We've got our part in context so we know how big it is, and we want to start making kind of a tub. We're going to use this feature called Loft to do that. And we're going to go back to this menu that we used where we had derived. We're going to have a look at planes. Okay, so we're going to have this tool open as well. We're going to make a number of planes that are going to go up from our base plane here, our front. So this is the bottom plane, okay? I'm going to go and I'm going to say, actually, I want to make another plane just below, about here. Okay, so this is my first plane that I am making, and it's on a slightly different layer. It's just lower than the dice. Okay, and I click tick. Thank you very much. And I can rename it so I know what it is, bottom. Okay. Then I can select this again and I can go to plane, and I'm going to repeat this task a couple of times to give myself some different planes that I can draw on. I'm going to put one about here so that the waist of my ball is going to come in. You'll see what I mean in a second. I'm not going to worry about renaming this one. I'm going to leave it called plane 1. And then I'm going to do one more for the sake of it. I'm going to go plane, and this one I'm going to use that as a base, and I'm going to just have it just up here. Okay, and you'll see why in a second. All right, so I've now got 1, 2, 3 planes all ready to receive sketches. So they've not got sketches on them at the moment, but I'm going to put one on in a second. Before I go any further, I think you should probably get yourself set up with your planes, and you can choose the heights at which you put them.